Hello and welcome back, sixth grade. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to go back over the information from yesterday and get a little bit more detail going on with some of these questions and some of these notes that need to go with the notebook. So, your job for today is kind of to follow along with me as I go through this slide and make sure that you have your notebook out to add any information that you kind of skipped over yesterday. Now, based off what I saw from a lot of y'all yesterday, there's a lot of people who put a lot of good information, but it seems like most people are always missing a little thing here or there or a lot of things here and there. So we want to make sure that we have a good start to this unit. Okay, so let's start walking through. First thing a lot of people forgot was you need the title. Okay, the age of exploration, which is a pretty specific time period, well known for mostly people like Columbus and Magellan and guys like that. But it's also the and trade part because the big beginning of this whole situation is the trade. Okay, so the age of exploration and trade. And the years here are very general. They're not very specific, as you can tell, but it pretty much takes place between the 1400s all the way up to the 1700s. So it's about a 300-year kind of swing. Okay, let's start talking first about the white tasks, which are these two questions. What did Europeans buy from Asia, and what did they use these items for? Okay, now these are specific to the pages 618 and 619 that I shared with you all, but we want to make sure that we have the right information. Okay, so I kind of laid out what exactly I want to put for this. So for the very first one, this was the answer most popular from most people. What did Europeans buy from Asia? They bought silks, spices, and other luxury goods. Okay, now, yeah, it drills in a little bit further, and I know when it talks about spices, it talks specifically about pepper, nutmeg, and cinnamon, which I know don't sound like a big deal today, but back then they were used for a lot of different things. Okay, so that's all part of the first question. Now, the second one, what did they use these items for, is a little bit more specific. Okay, the big one is preserving of food, which I'm going to talk about in a second here. Another one is flavoring of food. And then they listed things like using them as perfumes, cosmetics, and even medicine. Okay, so far already, I can tell you all that a lot of people probably need to go back and add a little bit of information to these two white questions right here. Okay, because we just added a lot of detail there that not everybody had much more than, maybe the word spices or pepper or whatever. Okay, now about the preserving of food, from what did they use this item for? That was the big issue here because obviously you could tell that way back when they didn't have refrigerators, they didn't have any means to kind of preserve their food. So, what they did with a lot of pieces of meat in a lot of these areas is they used salt and other spices to kind of make them taste better and even to preserve them. You could literally take a piece of meat and put it in a big barrel or a big crate full of salt, and it would just suck the moisture out and preserve it for longer. It would be like a kind of really nasty tasting version of beef jerky today. Okay, but it worked because then they could travel farther distances with this preserved meat. It would last longer during the winters. So, probably as nasty as it tasted, it worked for them to keep food for a lot longer. Okay, so that all goes with the first two questions. Now, the deal with this map, I think a lot of you all kind of got the whole point of it because it says then explain what is happening. But there's quite a few people that literally just wrote a map and put the letters with some arrows. And it says right here, explain what's happening. Well, the only way that you could tell what was happening is by looking at the pages 618 and 619 to kind of interpret what these letters go with. So we're going to go ahead and do it again right now. Okay. The map itself, am I expecting anything really drastic? No, I'm not. But as you all can tell, I hope, this is Africa right here. And then you have this big chunk, which is kind of partially Asia and partially Europe, which is up here. All the other stuff that's over here, like Greenland and South America, is going to be kind of irrelevant for right now. So let's backtrack all these letters along the path. Okay, first step, the C stands for China and the I stands for India. So this is kind of the starting point of this whole trade path. And if you didn't add that, you need to add that. So China has a lot of spices, they have a lot of goods, as does India. Okay. And what China's doing is they're shipping their goods along this path, and so is India. So this thing is kind of going backwards. Now it leads me to the B and the A. The B and the A are both different groups of traders. Okay, people that trade things. I don't mean people that like trade and go against you. But the Byzantine and the Arab traders are two specific groups. Okay, right here would have been the Byzantine or the Byzantine Empire, and then Arab, or what we call today like Saudi Arabia, which is kind of the Middle East right here, were just known as the Arab group. So you have the Byzantine traders and you have the Arab traders, and they're going to receive these goods from China and India, and they're going to kind of work as a middleman to get these goods kind of still heading westward. Okay, and the last two stops here, the I and the E, are pretty specific. I stands for Italy. As we know already from things we discussed in the last unit, there's a lot of merchants, there's a lot of wealth, there's a lot of business in Italy. So Italy is going to be somebody that's going to receive all these goods from now the blue groups. And what they're going to do is distribute them and sell them to the rest of Europe. So that's why E is right here over at the end of the line. Okay. So there's a lot of money, there's a lot of trade taking place along this whole path, but you need to go back and make sure that you have the C and the I and the B and the A and this I and this E and understand what all this means. Okay, because if you just slap the letters onto the map, this means nothing. Okay. Now, let's get into the last couple bits here. The blue questions. This one is kind of your opinion, but there are some specifics that you need to have in your notebook, okay? If you wrote an answer that was just kind of your opinion, you were just thinking about it, that's fine. But there are blah, blah, blah. There are some specifics from the textbook that I kind of wanted to see if anybody could find. Okay, so why do you think Europeans began exploring in the first place? Two reasons. One reason is because there was a lot of political changes along this path that started disrupting the trade. If you want to call them wars or things like that, you could, but that's kind of the step one of this process. So it wasn't as smooth as the years went on because there could be a war breakout or a political disagreement somewhere along the path. And then these goods from China and India are not going to make it all the way to the rest of Europe. So that's one reason that Europeans needed to start trading and exploring in other areas because their path here of trade and goods was starting to get disrupted. Okay. The other one, the big reason that they're going to start exploring, and you've probably heard this before when we talk about, Columbus and different explorers when you're in lower grades, is they were looking for a path to kind of go from Europe and go all the way around the backside of the world and get over to China and India themselves. They didn't know about basically half of the rest of the world at that point. They were unaware of places like North and South America. They didn't even know they existed. And they thought that this was just water out here. And if you went around to the backside, they figured they could get to China and India on their own and kind of skip these middle parts. Okay. Now, first thing that people are going to ask or going to say is this kind of myth that, again, back during Columbus's time and during this explorer time, they thought that the earth was flat and, they were going to fall off. Even during Columbus's time, y'all, like in the 1490s, most educated people knew that the world was round. There's a lot of different, really basic scientific experiments that would prove, even back then in the 1490s, that the earth was round and it couldn't be flat. So don't believe the internet, except for me. So basically, here's the deal. Let's go down to this last question about technological advances. Okay, I'm going to move myself over here. The pictures were obviously a clue, but if you don't have an answer for every one of these pictures in your notebook, you're going to need to add it. Okay, you all are just going to need to add it because they actually, all four are specifically mentioned in the text. Okay, so what technological advances? The first one here is the astrolabe. You might remember us talking about the astrolabe in previous classes, but basically, that has so many different advances and so many different uses that we don't really have to specify. But a lot of people were kind of getting more information related to astrolabes from Asia at that time and the Arabs. So they were adding almost like more apps to their phone. Okay, so they were finding new ways to use it for navigation and keeping track of numbers and things like that. So the astrolabe has a lot to do with that. Clearly, this next picture is a compass, and you wouldn't think a compass is a big deal, but you got to think about these explorers who are in the middle of nowhere in the water with no natural landmarks or man-made landmarks around them to figure out where they are. So having a compass, which a lot of you all that go hiking and camping, you know how these work. having a compass that you can take anywhere that will always at least give you your rudimentary directions was huge. Okay, because at least if you're all the way out in the water with nowhere to kind of figure out where you're going to be, you can at least know that you can head north or east or west or south directly by using the compass. So navigation became a lot quicker and a lot more kind of streamlined. So you didn't have to waste a lot of time trying to get from point A to point B. Okay. The third one here is kind of hard to figure out what it is, but it is a printing press. Now, the printing press is not really the star of this show, but using the printing press for things like creating more detailed maps and globes is the big ticket item. Because as you can see on this map, the further that these people go south, maybe along the coast of Africa, or definitely the further these people go west when they discover the new world or what's at least new to them, they're going to get more detailed maps and more detailed information as they go. So the next person to go explore is going to have a little bit more information, and the person after that, and the person after that. Okay, so this printing press is just down here to kind of remind you that they made maps quicker and more detailed as the years went on during this age of exploration. Okay, and last but not least, this is kind of tricky because it doesn't really have to do with just boats. Okay, so if you just wrote, yeah, they use boats or they made faster boats or they built faster boats, not really. Okay, what the book is going to specifically describe is the type of sails. Okay, the basic type of sail would be kind of like a square pattern or a rectangular pattern. What you can see in this picture is what is going to be kind of the game changer, which is triangular sails. Okay. And I know that doesn't seem like it's a big change or a big issue, but anybody that's been sailing before or been on a boat, you know that those triangular sails are the ones that can be brought down faster or they can be shifted from one side of the boat to the other. So you can turn a lot quicker, you can turn a lot more accurately, and you're not just blowing around in the ocean with no actual way of navigating yourself. Okay. So you're not really as much at the mercy of the wind if you have some of these triangular sails that you can maneuver a lot better. Okay, so again, for today, I'm hoping that you all have gone back through and added all this information. Now, as far as your actual assignment, I'm not going to have you turn anything in to me today. I'm not going to have you guys share anything with me today, but it's going to be on the honor system that you actually do this. And as you can tell from some of these other units and unit tests and little quizzes, if you've gone and done the work and you have the notes correct, then when you go back to study from these notes, it's not going to look so ugly on the quizzes and tests. Okay. Because at this point, I'm assuming that you all are just kind of keeping up and keeping the notes up to speed. So that's a good thing. Okay. So again, for now, everything on here, what you see is definitely what you need. And if there were some gaps somewhere, definitely make sure you go back and fill them in or add a little bit here and there because there's a lot of stuff on here, right? There's questions, there's a map, there's questions related to these pictures, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So as always, I hope you all are doing well out there. I hope everybody's staying healthy. I know a lot of people mention they're starting to get bored or have been bored for weeks. I'm with you. Okay. But we're hanging in there and we're doing a good job. So again, I'll talk to you soon and bye bye.